Mage is like super important in that dungeon, right? Like back in the day, it's like you
Get
spell
spell
steal
steal
this buff.
something. All the old
Yeah,
people, whenever I did that dungeon, just put that fact out there.
old people, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Today, this episode is going to be focused on a lot of like ranged stuff. We got two ranged masters here. I'm a smooth brain melee player, so I'll be chipping in when I can and giving my opinions. But yeah, this episode is going to be focused on ranged, and we're going to talk about a lot of the new nerfs and buffs that have been happening over on the beta. And hopefully, no pun intended, we have some time to cover a lot of the new Mythic Plus affix changes that just came out the other day. Preheat, you got your mic set up there?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Testing. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, everyone's good. They said you were low a little bit. I just adjusted the audio levels, so chat, let me know if the audio levels are bad and we'll fix that. But anyways, we're just going to jump right into the questions for Hopeful here. So, you've been playing Mage for a while, and now you're obviously moving up in the world. You joined Echo, and I think you've always been kind of passionate about the game, right? Just playing it a lot. But what advice would you give players who are looking to like re-roll to ranged DPS? So like if you've never played ranged DPS, like let's say Jedith wanted to play ranged DPS or even Mage specifically, what would you give them as like your biggest piece of advice?
I mean, like the biggest thing, because I actually started as a Holy Paladin, so I was melee, so I went in the ranged. The biggest thing was just like, I wasn't really free to move around as much as ranged. Because melee, you can kind of just move everywhere. But as range, you have to be like pretty, not precise, but like you move around way less, especially as like a Destro lock or something. You can't really move at all. So you have to be really aware of like how much you're moving and like what you're doing with your movement, basically.
Yeah, kind of like planning through the globals. That's definitely my feeling too. Like whenever I play melee, I find myself just like moving around for no reason, really, just because you can, right?
It's a habit that we have. We just tap strafe left and right constantly.
I guess in like the War Within though, for Fire Mage specifically, or like if you're playing Frostfire, it feels like maybe it's moving away from that a little bit though, because like so many instant casts, right?
Yeah, you're basically only instant casting. It's like you have like maybe 4 or 5 globals between combust if you're really unlucky that you're fireballing, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's nice. I guess, well, yeah, movement's really important and also being aware where everyone is standing too. And I mean, everyone kind of plays in melee these days in Mythic Plus. I feel like whenever you're doing Mythic Plus, even if you're ranged, unless it's like a specific boss or something where you're avoiding a certain mechanic, everyone's just kind of like in the F flow anyways. So kind of feels like you're still kind of worried about all the stuff that's happening in melee. So, to kind of chain off of that question, so if you're new to DPS and you are, let's say you came from healer, like you mentioned, what are like the top 3 things that you probably aren't doing whenever you first come into the role that might make a big difference aside from like your movement situation?
I think for me, since I was a healer, I was always out of range of my healers or like out of range of my team because I was like playing so far away that I didn't really notice that. I was just playing away from the boss like I thought I was supposed to, but like being in range of all your team is like important too. That I just didn't do a lot.
It's especially important now with pres healers, right? I think a lot of range players fall into that trap of thinking that because they are, labeled ranged, they have to be out at ranged. And, for some cases, I think that is true with like marksman hunters because they have to be a certain distance or whatever. But in a lot of cases, it's definitely beneficial for range to just stay in with melee. Like if you're dodging a frontal that's on the ground or like a cone ability, it's much easier to dodge it if you're closer to the boss than if you're further away from it.
I'll tell you, like as evoker, it's so annoying whenever there's range who are just like out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, dude, I can't even buff you. Like, what are you doing? It's always like a BM hunter, right? Because they can just like run around the whole time, so they're just doing laps around the boss. But yeah, I think maybe one thing that I hear a lot from people who reroll from healer to DPS is they don't realize that you have to press a button like every global. Like they are, I guess they're used to like just kind of pressing buttons only whenever they need to press a button. But like as a ranged DPS, it's or like a caster, it's like if you aren't pressing buttons, then you're not doing any damage. You need to like always be casting. So I think that also might be a good one. So like whenever you re-rolled from healer to ranged DPS, what was like the biggest challenge that you faced, aside from movement, since we talked about that, whenever you were getting into the role of ranged?
Less so M+, but in raids, being ranged is like way harder than being melee because melee you kind of just had the freedom to just move wherever you want for mechanics and everything. As ranged, you really have to plan how you're moving throughout the fight, which was something you never really had to think about as melee. You just do whatever and react as it comes. But as ranged, you just really need to actually just plan out what you're gonna do if something happens, like a mechanic spawns on you or something like that.
That was going to be one of
that's
my other
good.
questions because a lot of people say melee is easier than ranged. It's like a
This debate.
war that people are always having in chat. It's like, which one is harder to play? So are you saying that you think ranged has it harder?
So I mean, I thought about that question a lot. It's always just dependent on the fight or like just what's happening.
Mhm.
But generally, I think in M plus melee is harder because of frontals. You just like you move wrong, you just die. And I think in raids, ranged is generally harder because you have to plan out your movement basically. But like there always are some fights in M plus or raids where one is harder than the other. But I think generally it's M plus is harder for melee and raids it's harder for ranged.
I think I agree with that mostly. Yeah, I think. We have the screen showing through the green screen there. Yeah, I think it really just comes down to like what sort of mechanics are happening because some fights will have like really frustrating things to deal with as ranged, and other
Yep,
ones
exactly.
will have like things where maybe it's just like crazy hard for melee because of all the stuff that's happening, all the deadly stuff. But maybe you have to stack in melee anyways. Evoker gets the worst of both worlds, right? It's like you're
Mhm.
playing basically the melee role, but you're also casting spells, especially on a boss like Nimue.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
last year I like panic re-rolled Rogue for Tindril for my guild. I was in Instant Dollars at the time, and I think the first night I was progging as Mage because I didn't even have a Rogue at level 70. And like the difference between that one night of prog playing Mage and then playing Rogue on that fight, like the next day, it was crazy. Like as ranged, it was extremely chaotic, and then I go on melee as a Rogue, and that fight specifically, it was just like really easy and calm. I just followed the boss, and I was generally fine.
So
Yeah.
we've had I'm gonna switch over here because I want to show off the talents kind of leading into our next questions. So we've had a lot of changes to Mage in the beta.
Mhm.
A lot of changes. And I think we just recently so they did like one fire nerf and now another fire nerf specifically targeting like living bomb, Phoenix flame damage. We've obviously had like a lot of arcane changes too. They can't seem to figure out what they want to do with that tree, so they keep just like reorganizing stuff. Frost, they buff ice lance. I want to kind of get your take on this. So um obviously it feels good to have variety in the hero talents and like having the ability to not have to play SKB, but like what's your like temperature check on the mage talent so far? Like how are you feeling about that?
I definitely like everything they're doing is generally positive. Like I'm very excited about basically every single change they've done to the Mage. Like all three specs are generally good. Like they're pushing it in a way better and healthier direction, and it's just more
Yeah.
fun to play on the beta right now.
I agree. It's like really fun, but there are like I don't know. I don't want to like be I guess sad even though I have really awesome stuff here, but I do feel like there's some things that are lacking. Like for instance, like the flame strike stuff. I'm not even sure if I want that to be a
Yeah, for
thing.
sure.
To be honest
There's
with you.
always stuff like that, but
Yeah.
the thing with
But,
Flame Strike that confuses me a bit is like, what do they want? Where do they want you to use it, basically? Because
yeah.
it's like Igniter, Living Bomb right now, and Flame Strike is like just there. It's not really good.
Yeah, they've like got these really interesting talents. Like I really like the idea of quick flame where it's like your flame strike just deals more damage.
Mhm.
I like Majesty of the Phoenix in theory because we cast like so many Phoenix flames that like this feels pretty good. I'm not sure if I like that it works with instant cast though, but I feel like it kind of falls into the pitfall that a lot of the talent trees do where it's like you maybe okay, let's say that they tune it right and flame strike is like better maybe by like 5-10%, but like you're giving up so much single target.
Yep.
And with the new affix system, it's which we'll talk about later, but with the new affix system, it's always tyrannical and fortified, right? It's just
Yep.
scaled up a lot. So like you can't really just go AoE or single target. You have to find like some middle ground. And I feel like the opportunity cost of some of these talents is just too high to really justify something when you could just play Ignite, right? You can just play Ignite and probably do pretty good. So
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard to see like how they tune it because in M plus generally single target's worth way more than AoE, and
mhm.
Ignite is just such an efficient damage profile for single and AoE. It's like almost always gonna be the best unless the Flame Strike AoE is just that much broken, like it was in season 2 when the Mage first got reworked, when Fire first got reworked.
Flame Strike applies Ignite too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and we have some talents too. So like one of them that's interesting is Mark of the Firelord. I'm not sure if this is working because it didn't seem to be working with Living Bomb, but it says that Flame Strike and Living Bomb should apply it at 100% increased effectiveness.
Mhm.
Although I've
It
gone
wasn't
like all the
working
Flame
the last beta cycle. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's working now, but
yeah, I tested it. I did not test it with Flame Strike, but I did test it with Living Bomb. I noticed Living Bomb wasn't doing any ignite, so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this obviously isn't working right. But it'll be interesting to see, I guess, like how that pans out because it ignites like so much of our damage that it definitely feels like you need all of those talents to kind of make this build come online. I'm a little concerned with the amount of points I feel like I have to spend to make Flame Strike happen. So it doesn't feel like they could ever really make that worth it unless Ignite was just like severely nerfed.
yeah, because you're removing all those single target talents just for Flame Strike and the AoE.
How do you feel about the Living Bomb stuff? The Living Bomb stuff, obviously they've changed it, but like I guess just your overall feeling so far.
I want Living Bomb to be good so bad. Like ever since ever since it started, like it's sad on live right now. It's like barely worth to press it.
Mhm.
So I'm happy they're getting it to work. I think what they're doing right now it's less than what I wanted because right now it's like completely passive. You play around it if you want. It's like a little better too, but I would like something more to play around with Living Bomb instead of it being completely passive, I think. But other than that, I think what they're doing with Living Bomb is good and healthy for the game.
I just love whenever you well I guess before they nerfed it, it was like you came into the pack, right? And you're playing Frostfire, so you have excess heat, which gives you the free one that's juiced up. And
Mhm.
then you get the free lit fuse with Explosivo, so you just like press combustion, one Frostfire bolt, Fire Blast at the same time, and the whole pack is just like
Yep.
living bombed, and then boom, it all just explodes and disappears. That's like the best feeling. It reminds me of like back in I don't know if you were doing islands back in BFA, but
No.
like oh man, you missed it. So that was like the Living Bomb, like well, I guess like the glory days for Living Bomb were like Wrath of the Lich King, but that's old.
Mhm.
But like in BFA, you'd like gather up the whole island, so like like 100 mobs and Living Bomb them all, and it had uncapped. It would just spread to everything. It was
Preheat
really
was the
fun,
island master back then.
Oh, I
dude. I
see.
ran so
He
many
was,
islands.
he was the king.
I was going like head to head with Roger Brown for who could like get our neck up the fastest, and I only won because of the NA advantage. I got my
Mhm.
reset a day earlier. But yeah, dude, I loved islands. It was so fun. But honestly, I think islands are why Living Bomb got nerfed. Because
Really?
yeah, because I mean, your damage. You look at your breakdowns, like 90% of the Living Bomb is
Yeah.
crazy. It was super fun though, super fun. Yeah, I would love to see Living Bomb kind of come back to where it was because it was just super fun. I'm not sure how I feel about it being tied to Fire Blast because I feel like we're just like overloading Fire Blast with like so much stuff now. But also,
Mhm.
I do like that I can apply it off the GCD. That's kind of nice, right?
Yeah, it's really
And
nice.
yeah, and so like, have you been running like Frostfire, Sun Fury on the beta?
Yeah, I've tried both. It feels like they want Frostfire to be the AoE or M plus spec and Sunfury to be the single target raid spec. So I feel like Frostfire, you just get almost like triple the amount of living bombs you get with Sunfury just because of excess. This is like Frost
Yeah.
Mastery or Fire Mastery. I forget which one, but
Yeah, it's the excess fire. Yeah, that was going to be my next question was like, what you feel is better for Mythic Plus? Because I'm in agreement. Like Frostfire to
Mhm.
me feels like a Mythic Plus just like insane, right? The amount of living bomb damage is just nuts. And then also, I mean, Comet Storm too. Like
yeah,
Comet
Counter
Storm
Storm
is
does way
actually
too much. It does so
yeah.
much.
Comet Storm's super fun. I do like the idea of just like pressing Meteor on cooldown too, not having to wait for combustion for it.
Mhm.
Jedith, have you seen any mages popping off on beta? Any jealousy yet for the fire
Absolutely.
mages? Or are you feeling like
Yep. No, I
Uh,
played with a fire mage in what dungeon was it? Priory. And obviously there's a lot of trash there. And like you guys said, Living Bomb was just decimating that entire dungeon. Yeah, definitely a little jealous. I'm jealous of everything you guys have going because you have the sick visuals. Like that's just amazing off the hop. You guys have
Looks
it
so
set right
cool.
away. Yeah.
Mhm.
You have 3 hero talent trees that are all pretty sick, like even just functionally. They're all awesome. Then you have Havoc Demon Hunter, who has 2 that have fairly no visuals. One is extremely overpowered and doing insane damage, and it's incredibly complex. And then you have the other one, which is severely undertuned but super simple. So we have it rough right now. You guys are doing well. Don't take it for granted. Let me tell you.
So I don't want to stay on the mage topic for too long, but I do want to ask just like so we got like a really huge nerf, right? They hit us with just like flat percentage nerfs on all our abilities. Now they came in and they cut out a lot of scaling and living bomb. They cut out some of the living bomb damage. they've just been like hacking and slashing. Obviously on the beta, like before the nerfs, we were just like high in the sky. We need to be brought back to earth, sure. But what's your take on like the fire nerf so far? Are you still feeling pretty good about it, or are you starting to maybe eyeball some arcane or frost yet?
Oh, I mean, so before the recent changes, like yesterday for the arcane changes, like the first round, arcane was doing more than pre-nerf fire on the dummies, like after the changes. And after the changes yesterday, it's doing even more. So I think fire is kind of like the old toy you don't want to play with anymore. Arcane's just doing way more damage, and that's gonna come with because they're like just focusing on like reworking the talents and everything, making sure the playstyle is right. So tuning's always gonna be off, either
Yeah.
like in one direction or the other. In our case, it's way overtuned, but I still think fire's in a really good spot because it's still tuned well, and it's like the playstyle of it is really good with all the raid fights coming up with like ignite cleave and everything.
Yeah, the thing that kills me for Arcane is I look at the new talents because, well, I mean, I say new talents. Probably by the time this video is up on YouTube, there'll be another Arcane new
Hmm.
talents, right? Because it's happening like every other day. But the tree is just insanity because there's so much stuff that like you need, and then if you look down at the capstones, you're like hard blocked by prodigious savant, right? Because you need to get
Hmm.
lay sight. The talent's like too good to pick up, so you have to spend 2 points into that, and then one to lay sight. Plus, you need to pick up Siphon Storm. So already you're like locked in. It kind of has like the devastation evoker problem with the talents where it's like you've got so much stuff at the capstone level that like you have to pick up. And then you only really end up with like 2 points that you can kind of play around with to like try to do something fun. And they've put like a bunch of the really awesome talents kind of in out of reach places, right? Like stuff like Orb Barrage, you could pick that up, but like you're paying a pretty hefty price to get down there. So I feel like it's just the new design of it's like really bottom heavy. Damage seems good,
Hmm.
but I feel like the tree is just kind of monka. And also Chrono Shift. I would like to play this talent, but there's just
Oh,
like
I
no
would love to play
world.
Chrono Shift.
There's like no world where you can get Chrono Shift, and it's like, come
Yeah.
on, dude, let us play this talent. It's so fun. This is how I got around the mall. The only reason I survived the Shadowlands is because of Chrono Shift, right? Because I could just whiff my arcane barrages out. But yeah, um, I'm a little disappointed by that, but I'm sure we'll have a new tree soon, so it's fine.
Is
True.
is Arcane easier to play? That's what I've been hearing.
Than before?
Yeah.
Yeah, than before.
Yeah. It's way easier to play than
Is it?
before, yeah. It was like
Interesting.
kind of shocking at first because it felt so watered down from going to live to beta, but I think like overall, like after playing with it a bit, it was way better for the game and healthier, but it just felt like something was missing because it was so complex before. And now it's like you can actually understand the spec without a robot having to decide your rotation for you, So I think
Yeah.
it's definitely like really good.
Yeah, I feel like Arcane is like notorious for being one of those specs where it's like until the robot gets its handle on it, like no one knows. It's just like
Yeah,
crazy stuff,
exactly.
right? Like it always works the way that Blizzard doesn't intend it. Like it's always like somehow unintuitive. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think you can also say that for Fire as well. Like I think Fire is or not that it's complex, but that it's much easier now. Right? Like Fire, I feel like at least maybe not Sun Fury or Frostfire, but like Sun Fury feels like super easy. And it kind
Yeah,
of
the
pumps too.
only like hard thing about Sun Fury is managing your meteorites and like not munching them or whatever, but using them right.
Yeah.
But it generally is like super easy. I think Fire now was more like designed to be executionally hard instead of rotationally hard because you really only have like a couple buttons, but there's so many things tied to those buttons that
Yeah.
is what makes it hard basically.
Yeah, I really like the cook with Glorious Incandescence where you get it revved up and you get like the Brilliant Power and you go into combustion, you just get like back to back Glorious Incandescent procs. That feels so good. Hopefully they
Mhm.
fix that. I know it was bugged in the last build,
I
but
think it's fixed right now.
oh, that's
The
great.
current.
I'll have to test that out. Yeah, I did raid testing as both Frostfire and Sunfury. I definitely felt like as Sunfury I was just having a lot better time, just like a lot more
Mhm.
fun.
Sun Fury was way more fun. Frostfire feels like clunky compared to Sun Fury because Frostfire, you kind of spend more instant cast, but Sunfury, you get more fire blast, so you spend like double the amount of globals basically in combust.
Yeah, that's fun. I find myself as Frost Fury often munching Hot Streak because
Mhm.
it seems like it's worth it to do that, which is just kind of weird, but
There's just a lot of procs you get.
yeah, it's just suffering from success, right? I guess it's kind of like
Mhm.
enhancement shaman in that way, where like you have to like choose between your procs. But yeah, no, I think they're cooking pretty well with Mage so far. So let's move on to some augmentation questions. So you obviously you do like a lot of Mythic Plus, right? And you
Mhm.
play competitively, and you're doing the TGP right now. Ever since augmentation was added, obviously the class's concept is it like buffs and it gives a force multiplier. It seems like in some ways it doesn't just multiply damage though; it also has multiplied the imbalance in the game. Especially since now we have like a comp where you really want a PI target, you really want the PI or the priest, you really want the AUG in there, and like it just kind of like fits together with the raid buffs and everything, where you kind of have like a god comp, so to speak. That's what people are calling it. So, how do you feel about Mythic Plus ever since Augmentation has been added to the game? And if you just had to like say it without nuance, like is it good or bad? What would you say this?
I think generally it's good. So like, I don't know, from a game design perspective, because I have a game design degree, it's really good to have a support class. But my biggest problem with it, and like I think most of other people's, is I never know my damage anymore. Like it's never me impacting my damage number. I can't tell if like, oh, the thing I did here is good to do. Like it's more damage, or I'm doing a lot here. Like I played this back really well or something. It's you can just never know anymore. Even with like log hooks are still broken for some reasons, or like I don't even know like how are they broken, but it's just I never know the actual damage I'm doing anymore, and that's just the biggest thing I hate with AUG. But other than that, I think it's good.
Yeah, I feel like the log hook thing is a big issue, right? Because
Mhm.
whenever they announced Augmentation Evoker, everyone immediately said, "Oh, this is really bad because we aren't going to be able to have the feedback loop of knowing how we're doing." And then Blizzard said, "Oh, wait, hold on. We're adding the hooks. The hooks will fix it. You'll be able
Yeah.
to know what your damage is on Warcraft logs." And then, that has been, sometimes it works okay, sometimes it's
Mhm.
completely off. The first week of Emergency in season 4, it was like so off that like
Oh yeah.
you could just take like half the augmentation's damage. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if that's a problem they can ever really fix, because it seems like every patch it just gets somehow
Worse
worse.
and worse. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, and how do you design the game with new stuff coming out constantly, and like you always have to do this weird cleanup afterwards? I mean, they always have to do that, but like I feel like with augmentation, it's just so much worse now. So I don't envy the devs.
Are there particular hooks that are still broken? Like, do you know of specific things?
Yeah, there's stuff that's still broken. Shifting sands on unholy decays is still slightly broken. I mean, okay, let me just say this: every class is broken to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Still, it's just not a lot. It's like maybe 3%, anywhere from 3 to 7%.
Just little things here or there that just skew everything.
Yeah, it's like a little sprinkle, right? But the problem
Mhm.
is that you've lost the integrity of it is like it seems lost, right? Because you don't know, like Hopeful was saying, like you don't know, right? So if you see your damage numbers being really, really good, even in the pack, like if I'm in the game and I look at my details, I actually use that usually when I'm playing the dungeon over and over and over again to kind of gauge where I'm at that
Mhm.
point of dungeon to see if I did something better or worse, if I'm experimenting. But whenever I have an AUG in the group, it's like everything in there is just junk. So I have to just look at the logs later, right? But even if you
Yeah,
look
exactly.
there,
You can't
there's
even look
still
at
like
logs
so
anymore.
much. Yeah, there's just so much that's just it obscures your vision, right? And it's even worse if you're playing an AUG because I mean, hell,
Oh, I can't imagine
God
how it
help
is
you.
for the AUG, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh,
You're
why
just
was my damage
guessing.
bad here? Oh, the mage randomly didn't use their cooldowns. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's a mess. But for me, it's like it comes down to this, right? And so I'm showing on the screen here. I'll put the link in the chat so you can see it too. But right now I'm showing the stats for Mythic Pluses comps here, the percentage comps. And you can see that like in season 1, we actually had like a pretty healthy state of the game. It's never going to be perfect, right? But like balance was kind of ebbing and flowing. And there's always like times where people figure out, oh, this is good, so we'll start playing this, right? Like Prot obviously was starting to take over here at the end of season 1. But you can see that like with DPS, which I think is probably the best one to look at, that there's definitely like a lot of colors here, right? Like it's a nice little rainbow. And then you get to the Great Wall, right? As soon as you hit 10.1.5, it's like boom, augmentation, fire mage, shadow. And there's barely any areas. I mean, you start seeing balance maybe take a little ground. They're up to 8% here, but I mean, it really does seem like ever since AUG's been released, like the colors here have been let's just say they've been consolidated,
Mhm.
right? And I know this is like at the highest key level, but I feel like this is just like a global problem. It's just you don't really maybe notice it at lower keys because it's like filtered out. So I guess as a mage, like you probably don't care too much about this because you're still good, right? But I feel like I don't know. I guess what's your take on that, Helpful? Like, how do you feel about the balancing? Like, do you think they can ever balance augmentation?
I think the way it's in the game right now is kind of unbalanceable because it does way less damage than a normal DPS. But the reason it's good is because it provides so much security in the key and just
Yeah.
tankiness. And nowadays in these seasons, if you can't live the key, you can't time the key. You'll time keys just with minutes left on the timer, two chesting the highest key possible. And you just can't go further because you can't survive the key. And I
Yeah.
think Aug just makes that easier because with Aug now you can survive the key. You have so much just passive burst, so much defensive cooldowns like Zephyr, bunch of shield you get. I think with just how it exists, with all the defensiveness and how the keys are designed, it's always going to be Aug's in the highest key. If you can't like live the key and damage doesn't matter, Aug's just going to be the best choice.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what like the root cause is of like the damage not being as important. Because obviously you'll have like small things like the Bracken High Totems where it's like you need to have it's like a hard damage check or else you wipe, right? But back in Legion, like Mythic Plus was more about just doing as much damage as possible to get it done. And now I think because of all the mechanics and extra stuff that they've added, they've made like the timers more lax, and now it's just about survival. But yeah, I mean, how can you balance a spec that's giving people basically rally like for every defensive, every time you need a defensive
Yeah,
versus just
exactly.
like another class, right? Like you have to really give everyone a crazy amount of utility. And like we already have so much utility now, so many defensives. It's just like I don't know how they can make it hard for us with how much we have unless they just do like a stupid amount of abilities on the trash. But yeah, I do feel like they've kind of painted themselves in the corner. You know, people say like, oh, well, just add more supports. Right, there's the solution, but I don't think they're gonna do that. So, but maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's fine that augmentation is like slot in for high keys. It's actually kind of fun in keys.
I think it would be in a way better spot if keys weren't, if you can live this, you can time it, and it was more DPS related.
Yeah,
Like during a lot of like TGP practice, there's like one or two keys where timer is really important, and then you consider dropping an AUG or something like that. But I think if more dungeons were just more reliant on just doing damage and timing the key and playing clean and not just, can you live this one shot every 30 seconds? If you can, you live the key no matter with like 15, 20 deaths.
hmm
I think if that changes in the War Within, I think AUG will see a lot less play at the highest end if the damage it gives to other people is still like this.
yeah. That's actually like my least. I'm glad you bring that up. That I feel like that's my least favorite thing about the current Mythic Plus meta. Is
Yep,
just
mine
like
too.
it's like, oh, okay, cool. So we just spreadsheet out our defensives and we have wards. So we can like ward everything we have gaps on and you survive and you time the key. Like, I don't know. That's just, I
Every
care about
single
doing more damage, right? Like that's more fun to me.
Yeah.
every single time we start a new dungeon, I have the website not even close, just pinned. It's always on my second monitor. I just have to go through boss by boss, seeing, oh, this
Yeah.
mechanic, oh, I live with mirrors and barriers, that's fine. And then this mechanic, I don't live with mirrors, barriers, so what do I do? I basically just, every single boss is just multiple one shots. I just have to figure out how to live. And as a
Yeah.
tank, it's really simple. Or as a mage, sorry, it's really simple. So I don't know how other classes do it, but even as a mage, it's really annoying just planning everything out. And just, you have to, you can't time the key.
Yeah. Not even close. We actually did a shout out on that one last episode because that site's goated. They also
Mhm.
have the add-on too where you can like import it directly and so nice
Yep.
for being able to figure out like what you can live, what you can't. But yeah, I don't know. It just to me that's just like not the more appealing way to go about it. So I'm showing now on the screen. I'll link this one too. So this is showing the diversity for key level, and you can just see like how it tapers off at the top
Mhm.
there. It's kind of crazy how that works. Oh, speaking of not even close, Frostfire also has the barrier increase, right? Like you get 25% of frost barrier, which is
Oh,
like,
that's huge. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I was looking at not even close, and like if you have just like a little bit of verse, I mean, your barriers are just going to be saving you on pretty much every mechanic. It's kind of crazy, like
And
on top of what you already have.
Spellslinger makes your arcane barrier 50% stronger at lower HP. Frost barrier too, but that's
Oh
really
yeah,
important
yeah.
too. Yeah.
The reactive one, yeah, that's funny because it's like, okay, so I need to take damage right before the damage event, get healed after I use
Mhm.
my barrier, and now I have a bigger
Yeah.
barrier. My healers are gonna love me. Pair that with the cloak where it's like you get avoidance for taking damage. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm taking damage on purpose so I
To be
can press my
tankier.
barrier.
Yeah.
All right, top me quick before I get hit, right? And then, I'll be able to survive this thing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they can get us out of this situation. I feel like they would have to maybe cull some of our utility to maybe be able to fix this like paradigm of Mythic Plus.
That's the main problem, right? That's where it's all rooted from with the new talent trees, because we have so many
think so.
defensives and things just packed into there that it spreads. It spreads its problem roots, and it's causing a healing problem. I don't know how they fix it though, because it would feel really bad if they just suddenly took it all away.
Yeah, that's the thing is like now that they've given it to us, they're kind of in this weird situation. Speaking of stops, so we had a we had like a post recently, a blue post from this is the wrong one. It was like Ian Hazakasas talking about the creep of utility. The question here was basically directly asking about how stops are so important and if they like this current design. I think they said, how do you feel about this? This being stops, disorients being used to cancel almost every cast in Mythic Plus dungeons. Are there any changes to these in the War Within? The reply here was, this is also something we've been looking at. Yada yada. The key here though is, so we've been designing War Within dungeons to move back closer to how they used to be in that regard, still doing it where it's appropriate, but not defaulting to having abilities go on cooldown when the cast starts. Essentially what this means is that if mobs are interrupted during their cast, they should then begin the cast again, as opposed to right now where they just stop and they go on cooldown. So, I mean, you've been running keys. Have you noticed this, Hopeful? And I guess how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I've noticed it a lot because there's so many pulls where if you stop something, they just continue casting right away. Like Ruby Life Pool's first pull, you're just basically rotating through 20 stops in like a minute and a half pull, and you just need to stop every single second. And I definitely like his response and how they want to treat it, because I think stops are good for the game, but stopping every single cast every second is bad. So I think having a stop here or there every 10, 15 seconds when you need to for the spell is good. And I think what they said here and like making it that way is like healthier for the game.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like how this actually pans out, because I feel like this may just like make silences better, right? Because the silence will actually make them stop, right? As opposed to like knocking them back. So I guess it adds value to that. It also probably makes it so there may be even more importance for stops if the tuning is such that the thing would kill you, right? Like if you have to interrupt everything like you do now at a super high like fort key level, then well, how else can you really do the key unless you just stop everything? You're just going to need a lot more stops then.
Like doing the Ruby Life Pool's first pull, if you miss one stop out of like, I'm going to say 30 or 40 stops, your tank dies just from one missed stop. It's crazy. You need to do it every 2 seconds.
Some of them are like super fast too, like Halls and Fusion with like the ice shards. It's like such a fast cast. It's kind of insane that like you need to get the stops. I guess you don't need to get all of them, but like if there's obviously like another mechanic happening, like a breath or something, you
or
just
like
gotta...
ice cutters and Azure Vaults.
Oh yeah.
I basically stop whatever I'm doing if I'm supposed to stop it next and just solely focus on the stop bar and just hitting DB when it goes off to stop it.
Yeah, at least with those, it's like you can kite a little bit, but yeah, no, they're super nasty.
So how does it work now? If you interrupt something, it gets spell locked, and if you just stop it, stun it, it doesn't get spell locked?
It depends on the mob, I think. Some mobs will just continue casting as soon as they can. Some mobs will put the ability on cooldown. I know the flares in Halls of Infusion, if you stop the melts, they'll go on like a 20-second CD. You don't need to stop it ever again. But Ruby Life Pool casters in the first pull, they'll just immediately start casting right away.
Yeah, so the wording here is interesting, right? Because he said that they're moving it back to how it used to be, but like in my experience, how it's always been, at least whenever a beta comes out, the abilities all work this exact way whenever it first drops, and then they add the cooldowns later. So I don't know really what they mean by that, but yeah, I mean you can also see it like with it's not like a damaging cast, but like the cast that the dumb little guys do in Nakud first boss, right? To like try and break the thing. Like you stop it, it just immediately goes back. So like they're just basically adding like a blanket, like most abilities are going to work this way. I think that's probably fine if the abilities aren't threatening, but if you add like every cast, if you've got 9 billion casts, they're all going to be one shots on your tank, then that's probably a problem. Maybe just save it, let the abilities go on cooldown for the stops that like are meant to be stopped, right? That'd probably be a good solution here. But I guess we'll have to see how the tuning ends up. They're obviously still doing a lot of tuning and adjusting even how much the mobs cast too.
It seems like a lot of trash packs, though, do have a lot of casters in it. Like, that hasn't changed.
Yeah. There's a lot of casts, a lot of stops. The War Within is like It's a ton of that stuff. It's kind of crazy actually. So
Which is
I
a
mean,
shame because I feel like there's too much. Like they need to tone it back a little bit. Feels like they're
yeah,
just compounding mechanics on top of mechanics with each expansion, and it's just getting out of hand.
and keep in mind, like anything above 12 is going to be fortified, tyrannical, and it's going to have a 20% modifier on top.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you can like save your defensives for the trash because the bosses aren't threatening, or save your defensives for the boss because the trash isn't threatening. Like it's all equally threatening, right? So that kind of changes how you have to like think about what you're going to use where to in terms of like offensive and defensive cooldowns. Yeah, they'll definitely have to. They got their work cut out for them for sure to make this stuff bounce. I'll say that. But yeah, so whenever you're doing Mythic Plus, do you typically call shots, or is there someone who like designated is like a shot caller in your group?
I generally don't do it. If there's too many things to call, like I'll do it here or there, but I think that job requires way too much attention. You have to think about it so much.
Yeah. Do you feel like maybe there's like a role that feels better fit for that, or I guess like what do you feel like your role as DPS is in the key aside from obviously doing damage and getting your stops? What's the hardest part of it?
Probably just I don't want to say there's like one hardest thing. It's just mainly like just doing as much damage you can while playing the fight properly and not making too many mistakes. Because it's hard at a base level to do the max damage, but it's the hardest to play the fight properly while doing the most damage possible. So I think that would be like the hardest part of the DPS, which is other roles have to do like healer and and tank also have to do that, but they also have added roles. So it's definitely easier for DPS players than tank or healer players to shot call. And that's why usually you see usually it was the tank just controlling everything, and now it's shifted to more DPS players doing it, and now even more instead of DPS players, augmentation evokers doing it because they're supporting a lot more.
Yeah, the other reason too why it's great for AUG is because upheaval's cooldown is variable and it's like so short. So like you
Mhm.
always want to send it as soon as it's up. So if I'm doing shot calling, I'm doing it specifically so that I can force my upheavals on cooldown. So I can be like, you're stopping next, you're stopping next. Whoa, hold on. No, I'm upheavaling here, right? That sort
Mhm.
of thing. It's really nice. Also AUG feels like so easy in keys too, that
Yeah.
it's nice to just have something to do, right? Keep your brain stimulated in some way or another. Uh, so you've you know I mentioned this before, but like you've raided in a lot of good guilds before, and you know definitely guilds that were cut above, but now you're playing at like a world first level, so that's an even higher tier. Have you always had this level of passion for the game, or is this something that you've kind of grown over time? And do you feel like you have even more passion now, or is it the same as before?
I think now I have more passion because before it was kind of just a fun thing I did on the side. I played League of Legends for like a lot of my life, so it's just whenever I was bored of that, I just played WoW on the side and just play for fun, really. But as I quit playing League, I just shifted like basically all of my time in the WoW, and I'm still enjoying it. So I
That
say
sounds
it's
like a
been good.
healthy swap. You know, most of the time, whenever people say they're playing like a lot of WoW, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But it's
Mhm.
like if you're getting out of League of Legends, though, probably a
Yeah,
healthy thing.
Yeah, I played
That's a
League for
good thing.
like 10
it's a,
years.
it's a good trade.
Oh man, yeah. Has there been like anything that's been a weird adjustment? Like, I guess how's the prep going and all that?
No, there's just it's pretty much the same because I was in Instant Dollars and they finished World Fourth, so they do a lot of the prep, the PTR testing, everything. So it's kind of more of the same things, but it's more planned out and just more of it in general. Like you would have normal testing weekends where in Instant Dollars it's kind of just you can go if you want to go and you don't really have to do too much. But in like Echo and Liquid, I assume you have to just spend the entire weekend in the raid coming up with things like just everything you can get with the raid and just trying to come up with everything.
Yeah, definitely got to squeeze all that juice out too. Like they've actually been leaving a lot of the testing open longer than I feel like they have before, especially like Mythic Plus.
Hmm.
It'd be nice to get in there and do some keys, but yeah, it's I don't know. I guess it really just depends on like how or if you enjoy that part, right? Like, so I've been in that situation where I wasn't as passionate about it, and it felt miserable. But whenever I was passionate about it, it felt like the best thing ever. It was like so fun, right? So I think it really just comes down to like your state, like how you're feeling about it. I definitely think that to be like a really good player, you need to be like extremely passionate about the game. Like there's just like a lot that you need to be looking up and thinking about. And It's a big investment, right? But yeah, no, that's awesome that you're raiding there now, and good luck to you on that.
Thank you.
Seems like the difference that you're describing with the PTR testing is like when you're going in there with a purpose, like you're going in there with the intent of like getting ready and learning as much as you can about those fights with the intent of getting race to world first or world first, right? Like that's the goal. Like every little thing you can do to get better and prepare for it more is going to make it seem more worthwhile, and you'll enjoy your time in there more. But on the other hand, if you're going in like just to like see the raid, like just because you want to see what the bosses look like, or like you want to check out the environments, that's going to be like, it's going to be very short-lived in terms of like motivation and enjoyment when it comes to testing. Like my guild, we're a Mythic guild and we get cutting edge and Hall of Fame and stuff, but we don't really organize raid testing to go in there. We get a couple people here and there. We were in there last week, but it was like a handful of us. And now that Mythic testing's coming up this week, it's like, I don't really feel motivated to go in there. Like, sure, I'll see the same bosses. They'll have a couple extra Mythic mechanics, but it doesn't really make a difference for us, But I would imagine for you guys, because you're doing the race to world first, it's very important to get in there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's just like so much stuff to test, right? Because it's like every mechanic you want to see, like, okay, what happens if we spread out? What happens if we stack? Can we bait this on this guy? Can we immune this? Can we use the terrain in some way? It's like you've got this whole like list of like ways that I can break this mechanic, and then it's like you have to go through the list check by check to make sure you check all of them off the list, and then you move on to the next one. It can feel tedious, but also it's super fun if you like if you're like very passionate about like raid encounters, right? Because there's just like so many interesting things you notice. You start like kind of connecting the dots between how Blizzard does these kind of mechanics, and you can kind of almost guess how things work just by reading the tooltips. And that's what I still love about it, right? I'm in a way more casual guild now, but I think we're still going to do some testing soon here. We just did like a poll to see who wants to do the testing, but like that's the biggest thing I miss about playing in like a more competitive guild, was like getting in there and testing all the nitty gritty stuff. To me, that's just like really, really fun.
Yeah, solving the puzzle.
Yeah, love solving the puzzle. So let's move on to some fun questions. Jedith, why don't you kick us off here?
Sure. All right, the fun questions. The first one we're going to tackle here, and everyone can answer this if they have an answer. If not, no worries. If you are a dev for a day and can make any realistic change, no questions asked, what do you change? Hopefully you can go first.
I think I'm kind of biased because I have a game design degree that I went to school for. So my answers are kind of be little, I don't want to say different, but more like targeted to one area. So instead of just an overall thing, I think the biggest thing, so I do M plus a lot, is just making it so just the biggest thing is like one shots don't stop it. I want the key to be decided on the timer basically, and not if you can live this one shot, you would pass the dungeon. So I think that's the first thing I would do, is just make it so dungeons are more reliant on like just damage and doing the dungeon cleanly instead of just living one shots.
Yeah, that'd be great. I feel like that would also make it so you could finally play Devastation for once in a key.
Yeah.
Because it would be about doing more damage, right? Because Aug doesn't really do as much damage. It's just really good for making you live. Yeah, I think mine is just like kind of the same idea, but it's kind of a wider scope thing. I just don't like the utility, the support utility that Augmentation provides, and I don't think that it will ever be balanced. So if I were to make a change to the game, I would probably look into redesigning Augmentation in some way to make it either fun to play, because I would have a lot of fun playing it if it was enjoyable without having to like do something else like shot calling or something like that. Either make it fun in some way by doing like a full redesign it, or just make it like a tank spec. I was really hoping for a tank spec with it, and was really disappointed, but I think that would make me pretty happy. And a lot of people who also play Aug and Raid probably pretty happy too.
I think we need another tank spec too. Like, it's been a long time since we've got a new one.
I feel like tanks disagree with that though. Tanks are always like, dude, there's too many specs. Maybe because they have to like make all their characters, right? So they're just like annoyed by having to do that.
If you're the type of player that plays every tank spec because you have to chase the meta, then yeah, I could definitely understand that.
Yeah, because tanks generally play all the tanks, but DPS don't play all the DPS.
Yeah,
healers and tanks have it hard with that stuff, don't they?
Healers do it too, right? Like there's maybe a handful of healer specs, and yeah, they all jump between them. I don't know if this is my top thing that I would change, but it would definitely be on the list of things, is to make crests account wide. So for alts and stuff, because right now you just have to do an insane amount of keys if you start a new character and you're trying to like, level up all your gear. It's insane. It's way too much.
And you're like me, where it's like you just want to play one character, right?
Yes.
Like you want to have ults, but you don't want to spend like all your time on your ults. So like
Yes.
I would love to be able to put the time that I'm putting on my main, where I've got like, let's say I've got like 2,000 extra crests.
Mhm.
Like why can't I do anything with this?
Yeah.
It feels bad.
Like I do understand
that'd be
having
good.
to play the character to like learn it, I guess, in a way, like put you through the
You need
ringer.
flight stones.
Yeah, we do need flight stones, and we can get those pretty easily just by doing content.
That's right.
I'm getting a huge storm here. I don't know if you guys heard that. It's
Dude,
like
I hear
massive
it.
Thunder. Do you?
That's crazy. We need some of that here to get rid of this heat dome.
If I just
With this heat
disappear,
in DC.
you know what happened. Just keep going without me.
If the power flashes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Do you have an embarrassing, cringeworthy moment from when you first started WoW? We asked this to Dorky, and he didn't give an answer. I think you're obligated to give some answer this time.
Pressure's on.
I don't know. There's a couple so I started doing M plus kind of recently in Dragonflight, so there's a lot of little things that just I didn't know about the game. And I think one that's a clip somewhere, someone could probably find it. I didn't know the first boss of Brackenhide had a totem that you needed to kill. And I think there's a one time in season 2, we're doing like a 24 Brackenhide where my healer's freaking out, my tank's freaking out. I have no clue why. And then we eventually wipe. And then we look at totem damage, and they told me there's a totem. And when you look at the totem damage, I'm losing to everyone. I'd have like 10k damage on it from like a passive cleave or something. So I think that's the one that sticks out in my head the most.
Wait, when did you start playing?
I started when the corruption vendors were released in Nihilotha.
Oh, wow. So you're like new money WoW then.
Yeah, and then I didn't do any N plus until season 4 Dragonflight.
Wow. Until season 4? Seriously?
I was only rating, yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Or no, season 4 of Shadowlands, sorry, not
Shadowlands,
Dragonflight.
okay.
Shadowlands, yeah.
Dude, the passion hit you so hard. That's insane.
Mhm.
Because I've been playing since like literally the game came out initially. And there's so many people I meet who like have started playing recently, and I'm like, oh, they must be doing something right to get those people in. But I'm also like, I'm not sure if I would play right now if I was coming in new. I feel like right now it's just a habit that I've formed and I just can't get out of it. But damn, that's crazy.
You're stuck.
No Mythic Plus until season 4.
No, because I
wild to me.
played, I had to scrim basically every day for 8 hours, so that's like all I had time for. Just raid 1 or 2 days a week just to raid, and I never really liked M plus that much, mainly because I was a healer. But I eventually found more time because I stopped playing League, and eventually just fell into playing M plus a lot.
I told an embarrassing story last time, so let's see if I can think of another one. One time, okay, yeah, here we go. In BFA, I had just started doing Mythic Plus, and I formed a push group with my friends, and we weren't very good, but we tried, and we were having a rough night. I kept dying. I was having a very bad night, and at the end of the night, we all hearth back to Borealis, and we're chilling there. I opened up my character pane, and I realized that I had one ring equipped the entire night. The other ring slot was empty. I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened, but it
At least it was a ring.
Yeah, it explained a lot. I lost a lot of stamina, a lot of stats.
I've seen people use a fishing rod for like all of a progression night. So
oh no,
or Stormwind Cloak.
Yeah, it could be worse.
Oh,
Dude, the
no.
Stormwind Cloak. Oh my god. Gromneck. Yeah, no, I mean, I've definitely done like silly things like that. I guess for me, okay, last time I told the story about how I was thinking Lust was on cooldown because I had the stupid toy in the macro. But I guess another one would be, so whenever so I did like the second MDI, and whenever we were doing Brackenhide, or not Brackenhide, god, Black or Cold, Mage is like super important in that dungeon, right? Like back in the day, is like you spell steal
something. All the old people, whenever I did that dungeon, just put that fact out there.
Old people, come on,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. So, anyways, back when I was a young person, I guess I was doing this key, and dude, I literally all of the practice never died to the stupid boulders, not even once. I was always very careful, very confident of myself, just running up there full speed, never having any issues. Comes to the MDI, of course, I just died of boulder. Like, I think it was actually the first boulder. Like, I literally turned the corner and just instantly died. So there's probably a clip out there of that. But yeah, I don't think, I think that came down to nerves, but I was definitely like very embarrassed by that.
Last question. Which class has the best players and which class has the worst? Be careful with your answer because you will upset or make them very happy.
I can go first.
You go first.
I mean, of course, mages have the best players. Just of course. And I don't need to really explain that one too much.
Yeah.
They're the main
Evident.
characters of this game. So
Of
yeah.
course, yeah. That's why I played a mage. I
Yeah.
knew they were always going to be good and required. I mean, the worst. Typically, I don't know. I was going to say healers or rep paladin, because they're generally easy to do a baseline job of, but it's really hard to like play them well. So like a lot of people just doing average content don't really need to play them well. So yeah, I think healers or rep paladins. That's my answer.
Preheat, you go next.
Oh, best players, mages. Come on. The answer is self-evident, right?
Okay.
I mean, is it even a question? Let's be honest.
Mhm.
And then worst players. I mean, I hate to throw them under the bus because I love them and I love talking about them, but you know it's those Augs, man.
I was gonna say Og too.
You know it's them, dude. I mean, with peace and love, like they're just out there like showing their asses and keys. It's crazy. You pug some keys with some pug Augs, you'll see some shit. It's yeah, I don't know. I love them, right? And I want to teach them how to be better, but man, not having the ability to know like if you're making a mistake, it really does have an effect on your gameplay. It really does. So yeah, I don't think it's their fault. I can't blame them completely, but I definitely think it's those Augies out there.
I'm gonna go with a different answer. I'm gonna say for the best, I'm gonna say rogues. I feel like you have to have like a lot of precision and like attention and focus to play a rogue. Maybe that's just my perception. Maybe you guys have seen some shitty rogues, but I feel like they have a certain like skill cap that you need to be able to play around. The worst, I'm gonna have to say, and I'm part of these people, the demon hunters. And I think they'll be okay with me saying that because they love being the worst. They love crying. They love complaining. They love being the butt of every joke. They revel in it. So I'm gonna say the demon hunters are the worst.
Dude, demon hunters do things I've never seen before. Like they'll die in the funniest way that like you've never even realized you could die that way.
Mhm.
Like they'll backflip into like, you know, a hole that you didn't even know was there,
Yeah.
or just like fell rush into someone with like the I swear it's like there's always a new way to see a demon hunter die in a fight.
Fell rush on Senarth and just go a million miles per hour
Yeah.
off the platform.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the dog on the hardwood floors with its
Yeah.
you know, the can't control it. It's so
Well,
good.
to be fair, we do have to play in a way that no other class has to play.
Yeah, I mean,
You know.
you're basically on rollerblades, and
Yes.
there's banana peels everywhere, so it's really hazardous for you.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of other players recognize that or realize that. We're playing a
Dude.
whole different game.
Yeah.
And Fellblade is
Mhm.
like the thing that kills me on my demon hunter more than anything else. I think I'm close enough where it's not going to vacuum me into the mob, and then turns out, nope, I'm not, and I just fling myself right into a frontal or something stupid like that.
Yeah. I'm working on a new merch idea for a shirt that says Fellblade made me do it.
It's true. I've actually said that a lot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a hot selling piece of merch for me. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all the fun questions we have. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on before we wrap it up here?
I mean, we can talk more about Mage if you want.
I think we've done enough of that.
There's a lot.
I think we've done enough of that. Did anyone have any thoughts about the new Mythic Plus affix changes? We want to touch on that a bit?
Yeah, actually. So, so just to give everyone an idea of what we're talking about here, right? With these changes, I'm just going to get them pulled up right now on the main screen. So, essentially what's happened is Blizzard has basically redone the affix system. So the system that you know now, that's not going to be how it is. There will be a set affix for every key above, or I guess above 11. So 12's included. It's always going to be the same thing every week, so there's no more push week, right? And essentially what you're getting here is Fortified, Tyrannical, this thing, which makes it so if you die, it's called Challenger's Peril. You get basically 3 times the hazard of death because you have 15 seconds off of that timer there. And then we also have the Bargain. Essentially, this replaces like what you have is like typical affixes that exist below 12. But this one just gives you, 20% harder scaling, essentially. So what they've done is they've basically made it so that the key experience for casual players who aren't looking to push keys anywhere above 11, the experience will be mostly the same with like a rotating weekly thing and like a Fun Kiss Curse buff with the bargain buffs. So it's very much in line with like what you would expect, although there's less variety, I guess, because there's less affixes to switch through. But for the players who are looking to push, you will always have the same experience every week. This week is push week. Last week was push week. I wasn't moving, but I was like traveling across the country all last week, and it was terrible because push week was happening. Guess what? I couldn't log in. I'm sure it's the same for folks who are trying to do all the time trial stuff, right? Like, like if you want to get the score on live, you can't if there's something else going on in push week. So this is really good that they've made it so push week is now kind of open ended. You can kind of do it whenever you want, but yeah. So takes on this. Obviously they also removed all the old affixes too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten rid of sanguine, bolstering, raging, bursting. God bless. Also, all those new cringe ones that they did too, those are gone.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the recap on what they're doing. I think for me, the biggest thing about this change, aside from there not being a push week, which I think is really great, is the fact that they now have a separate lever to adjust the tuning on high keys.
Yes.
Right, because they have this buff with the guile buff here, right? 20%. They can change that number, and they can make keys harder or easier at above the 12 level for the high key pushers without impacting all the casual gameplay, right? And the most of the other players, because obviously the majority of players are going to be doing keys below 12. So I love this part, but I'd love to see what you, or I guess hear what you think about this, Hopeful.
I think every single change they've done to M Plus is positive. Like everything they did or removed is basically just fixing a problem that there was in M Plus. Like no push being a thing is huge because last season, at the end of the season, I was pushing with Yoda's team, or at the time it was just with Yoda and some other players on NA, where we would just play a lot every day for a week, and then we would take a 3-week break because there's no push week. So you just couldn't play the game at the highest level. But in general, everything they've done is really positive. The only thing that is a little weird is the bargain affixes only below 12. I know it's kind of like a high key thing, but it feels weird having such a cool thing because I did a couple beta M plus dungeons last night, and it felt good to play with them. It just feels weird that it's only in 12 or like lower than 12 keys because it's something I want to interact with in high keys, but it's just something I can't, So it feels weird not being able to experience something that a lot of the player base is going to play with.
So I'm getting it pulled up here on the main screen so y'all can see it. Basically, this is what it looks like here with these orbs. Essentially, there's one of these mechanics. You get these orbs here.
So that's
they
the
all come out.
one.
Yeah, and so like they all have these like casts, and you have to basically break them. And if you don't, then they give the mob a haste buff, and it's a huge haste buff.
So yeah, this is only in lower keys. But I will say I think this mechanic in particular does need to like maybe cook a little bit more because I could see it being problematic. The only way you deal with those orbs is they're like Razageth orbs, right? So you have to stun them, dispel them, interrupt them, whatever. And that mechanic is happening every minute. So you are sometimes forced to use your utility to take care of those, and then you might not have it for either the pack you're dealing with or the pack coming up, because you can do something like, so they might all spawn, right? And you'll use a big AoE stun, and there might be a few left, so that you would think, okay, I'm going to go use my interrupt to get this one, a single target stun to get the next one. But then those are used up, and you can't use them again for a little bit, right? So it might get problematic. And like you saw in that video, everyone that gets missed or not taken care of will give the mobs a stacking 10% haste. And if you don't get any of them, the mobs will get a 200% haste buff.
It's crazy how spread out they are.
They're very spread out.
To stop them. Wow.
There could be some problems too where you give the mob that buff and then you mind control it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there could be some shenanigans there. So I do think there needs to be a little bit more adjustments with this. It would even be cool if like you could do damage to them to get rid of them.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was about to ask.
You can put damage into them. You can put damage into them, and it shows on details, but their health bar doesn't move.
Oh, that's weird. Is it like absorb shield that you have to break maybe? And it's like really big?
Shield, but it's I don't think you can break it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, because you can on Rezageth, you can break them with just damage. Like I do that with Fire Breath sometimes. I'll just
Can you? I didn't know that.
Hit a big pack. Yeah, you can break them with damage. But obviously the amount of damage it takes varies, I think, depending on which one it is, because they keep respawning. But what about this other one? I guess maybe we haven't been able to test it yet, but Frenzied. Non-boss enemies become frenzied at 30% health, remaining increasing haste by 40%, but increasing their damage taken by 20%.
So it's like raging, but we get damage bonus too.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, 40%, that's a lot of haste for a mob to get, especially one that like has some sort of mechanic thing that happens when they get low. Like think about like the fire drake that you skip in like Ruby life pools. You get that thing low, and man, that's gonna start shredding. But I can kind of see like why they didn't have this on the like high keys. But also I agree, like it'd be fun to like be able to do some of these new interesting affixes at like a higher key level. That would actually be fun. But I also appreciate that they've basically done this weird song and dance saying here are the affixes, but actually there's no affixes, right? Because it's fortified, it's tyrannical, it's 20% on top. The only real affix here is just the 15% death. So it's just more, it's more punishing essentially. But in a way, it's like they've removed affixes without having to admit that they removed affixes. I think it's great. I'm super happy about this, but I also think it's interesting that it's kind of like a weird, almost like a legalese way around saying like, no, we didn't remove affixes. Actually, they're still there.
Well, they removed them for the people that
damage.
Wanted them gone, and they left them there for the people who don't care.
It's a good compromise. It's really smart. Yeah. It's really smart how they did this. I wonder if it's going to create a bigger barrier of entry though for players who are like new to the game trying to get into Mythic Plus pushing, because like going from 10 to 11 is fine, but then you go from 11 to 12, you're going to feel that, and it's going to be big, right? And every step after 12 is also going to feel worse now. I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to see how it pans out. I guess it just depends on tuning.
The Guile thing is essentially just increasing the key level by 2 levels, right?
Yeah, 20%. I don't know exactly how it's going to stack though, because I haven't tested it, but I assume it's going to be like the same percentage as like the normal key percentage. Wouldn't it be weird if it was multiplicative? I feel like that'd be crazy.
The other thing to note too is with the bargains, those are just 2 of them. Supposedly there's going to be more, but they're only showing us 2. There's going to be more rotating.
That's cool.
So
it feels even worse. I want to play with them, but I can't.
At least we're going to get our fix of them during like the first week. Yeah. Whenever you go in there and you do like 1 billion keys to get your character all, whatever the I'm level it's going to be, all that loot there.
That's what I feel a little weird, because if you watch your streamers play those keys, you're not really playing the same key as them anymore. It's kind of just completely different because you have ads, you have the CC now, but when you watch your streamers play, they don't have that, It's
almost like a different mode. To me, it kind of reminds me of like heroic raid versus mythic raid, but maybe not to the same extent, where there are different mechanics, number one, and number two, the tuning is like way different. So it definitely feels like there's a wall here. And I don't know if that's going to be necessarily a negative thing, but I could see it maybe turning some players off. We'll have to wait and see, but I like that they're experimenting here though. That's great. And that they're listening too. Like they heard what players said about these affixes. Players were very vocal about not liking this stuff. And Blizzard said, you know what? All right, we heard you. We're going to fix it. So huge kudos for them for that. Definitely looking forward to how the system turns out. I really hope that they keep this kind of system and they don't go back to the old affix stuff.
I think keys are going to slow down at that higher level too. So
God. Lot, yeah.
Like, because usually if you're doing a Tyran week, the bosses take extra time, but the trash, you can breeze through it a bit quicker. So you're still able to get through the key in a reasonable time. But if both are, pretty chunky, keys are going to slow down.
It's already happening a little bit now.
I wonder too, like how much room for progression at the top end there's going to be too. Like how many key levels will actually be able to push through with this scaling? Because if you can only go up like 5 key levels, that might feel a little bad. Yeah.
It's definitely going to make the cap on the highest end keys that get done for the season be way closer to title range, right? Because there's going to be, you may have like maybe +1 or +2, depending, but yeah, it's definitely interesting.
It's super weird because even like the current key reduction where it went from like 30s to 20s, if you look at the time trials right now, we did 21 Ruby under 4 minutes, but you just can't do 22 Ruby because it's too much damage and there's not enough time in the key. So like it went from being, if you get time a key by like 2 minutes under, you can probably do the next key. But now it's just every key level means so much more. And it's just going to be so much harder. You just have to go for time sometimes.
Yeah, I'm getting pulled up here. Yeah, I've seen how a bunch of 21s are getting posted up. Definitely interesting to see.
Look at that spec diversity, class diversity.
Yeah, the game is so balanced right now, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great. It's good on my end.
So much class balance. Yeah, I mean, as a mage enjoyer and also someone who plays Aug for keys, I don't really care too much personally. You know, there's a lot of people playing this game who aren't playing these three
Yeah.
classes. Who don't really have much interest in it either. I would say just, you know, maybe pick one up and try it out. Try to be Fodom just once, see if you like it. Definitely seems like balancing's a bit sussy right now. That's for sure. There was a ret paladin here though. You gotta point it out.
Yeah,
Look
I
at
saw
that.
a Mistweaver monk
multiples.
too. 2 of them.
Yeah, little pink showing through. Yeah, Mistweaver on the beta. I don't know how healing tuning is looking now, but man, they were super strong like a week or two ago. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining us here. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And definitely we'll continue picking your brain about mage stuff. Looking forward to more changes and seeing where all of this goes. So let's go ahead and do our sign off. So thank you again for tuning in. And again, our podcast will be up on Spotify as well if you prefer to listen to it. So you can check us out there. We'll continue to make episodes. My name is Preheat, and Jedith, why don't you go ahead and sign off here and pass it over?
Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be back in probably like 2 weeks. We'll have another episode lined up. We'll let you know. Hopeful, thanks for chatting.
Mm-hmm.
And where can people find you on the interwebs?
I stream at Twitch at HopefulX. My Twitter is HopefulQT, I think. But yeah.
All right, everyone go check out Hopeful. Drop him some follows. And we'll see everyone next time. Thanks for watching.
All right. Thank y'all.